Today we're going to talk about a new concept called absolute value. But before we get started with that, let's just review a couple of things for our bell work. Let's talk about comparing less than or greater than. So if we look at the numbers, we're going to write down what we think is less than or greater than in these two cases. So 12 and 14, well, 12 is obviously less than 14. Number two, 36 and 26. Well, we can know pretty assuredly that 36 is bigger than 26. What about number three? We got a couple of negative numbers. Well, it turns out that negative 2 is bigger than negative 5 because it's to the right of negative 5 on the number line. How about number 4? Well, negative 8 is bigger than negative 15, so negative 15 is less than negative 8. That's how I've written it there. Number 5, 13 and negative 10, well, that's obvious. 13 is bigger than negative 10. And number 6, this one could be a little confusing for some of you, but because 19 is positive and 20 is way to the left of that on the number line, we know that 19 is going to be bigger, or negative 20 is less than 19. Okay, have you ever tried to explain something to a friend only to have them say that they were more confused than ever? Like some mysterious thing like a whale washed up on a beach or some strange creature deep in the ocean? Well, absolute value can be a little bit like that. Sometimes after we explain it to you, sometimes you might be a little confused about it, but we don't want it to be that way, and we'll do our best to avoid getting you confused. So let's go right into it. What are we talking about when we say absolute value? Well, we'll know that at the end of this lesson. We'll understand the meaning of absolute value of a number. We'll be able to determine the absolute values of real numbers, and we'll even solve a few problems using the concept of absolute value to help us out. So start off with, let's recall that the integers are all of the whole numbers on the number line, including the negative numbers and 0. So all those counting numbers on either side of 0, including 0, are called the integers. So then another concept that's going to be helpful is this: distance. The amount of space between two things, two people, or two numbers represents the distance between those two things. So here's the definition now of absolute value. The absolute value of an integer is the distance between the number and 0 on a number line. So I'm going to grab my little arrow here. If I wanted to know the distance between 2 and 0, well, I just count 1, 2. So the absolute value of 2 is just 2. All right, absolute value. There's a couple of characteristics that we need to keep in mind. The absolute value of an integer is the distance between that number and 0 on a number line. The absolute value of a number is A is written as with two straight lines written on either side of A. So if in a particular question they want to know what the absolute value of a number is, they will just write two lines on either side of it, and that is a key for you to know that they're looking for the absolute value. Absolute value is always expressed as a positive value or a positive number. For example, here's 5 and negative 5. With those two straight lines, that means we're looking for the absolute value of each one. So the absolute value of 5 is indeed 5. The absolute value of negative 5 is still 5 units from 0, so we just say the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. All right, so let's try a couple. How about the absolute value of negative 6? Well, in order to get back to 0, we have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the absolute value of negative 6 would just be 6. By the same token, the absolute value of 4 is just 1, 2, 3, 4 units from 0. So the absolute value of 4 is 4. Notice we didn't have any negative numbers. We're not talking about direction or greater than or less than. We're just talking about distance so far. Okay, find the absolute value of the following integers. So the absolute value of -2, well, that would just be 2 units, right? 1, 2. And I'm not going to use my little arrow to go onto each one, but the absolute value of -2 would just be 2. If we had a little marker over at 8, we'd have to count back 8 spaces, so the absolute value of 8 would be 8. The absolute value of 10 would be 10, and the absolute value of -7 would just be a +7. All right, so far so good. All right, let's compare the following values using less than, greater than, or equal to. So if I have the number 1 and the absolute value of -4, which is 4, now I'm going to use my arrows or equal sign to compare them. And so I know that 1 is less than 4, so that's how that would look. How about this one? The absolute value of -6 I know is 6. The absolute value of 6 in this case is 6. So after finding the absolute values of those two numbers, I notice that their values are equal to each other. All right, find the absolute value of the integer. So let's just try a couple of these. The absolute value of 7, well, that's just 7 units from 0. The absolute value of -1, well, if you start at -1, you'd only have to count 1 to get back to 0. The absolute value of -5, you'd have to count over 5 spaces to the right to get back to 0. And the absolute value of 14 is 14. Again, all positive numbers when we're looking for absolute values. All right, let's copy and complete the sentence using less than, greater than, or equal to. So let's grab a different color here. Let's go with blue. We've got the number 2. The absolute value of -2 is 2. And then we still have that -1. No one's asking for its absolute value. Is because there's 2 straight lines are not on either side of it. So we're left with this, and we know that 2 is greater than -1. All right, on number 7, after we do the absolute value that's on there, we end up with 10 and 11. And we know that 10 is less than 11. Number 6, we've got the number -7. And then on the right side, we've got the absolute value of 6, which is 6. And wow, that we can tell pretty surely that -7 is less than 6. How about this one? We've got the number 9. And on the right side, we have the absolute value of -9, which is 9. So it turns out that those two values happen to be equal to each other. All right, very good so far. So let's just do a quick review. What is the definition of absolute value? Well, remember, it's the distance from 0. How far a number is from 0 on the number line. It's always expressed as a positive number. Okay, let's solve a few absolute value problems. The absolute value of 43 is 43. The absolute value of 7 is 7. If I subtract those numbers, 43 minus 7 is 36. Good. Well, that's it. I think you can handle a few problems doing what we've just demonstrated. So the assignment is on Alex. It's on absolute value. And good luck. Thank you very much.